We are joined now by the great Tim Watts from Bama Online. Tim, it's a big day in Tuscaloosa because it's the day that the coordinators actually talk to the media. We only get one of those until the playoff, if they make it to the playoff. So savor the Tommy Rees and the Kevin Steele quotes.
Yeah, they'll look totally different the next time we see them. You know, they'll have gained 10 pounds or a layer of muscle or a full-grown beard. So it's going to be a minute, but everybody waits to hear them talk because you don't hear from them. Now, still, they probably heard, you hear Kevin Steele talk. He sounds like basically a guy that could win any karaoke concert. He's got that deep voice, so you know who he is. But seeing Tommy Rees for the first time was interesting. We've had a lot of comments. How young he looked. Like he obviously is a young guy, but he looks like he almost could be a player.
He's a baby. And that's, he was playing for Notre Dame not that long ago.
Yes,
it really wasn't that long ago.
No, it's crazy. Yeah.
So let us talk about bird dogs. Are you living the most efficient life you possibly can? If you're not wearing bird dogs, then you're not, because these are the greatest shorts and pants you've ever worn, because they have a built-in liner that feels like it was made for you, and you never once have to buy underwear or wash underwear again if you're wearing bird dogs. Right now, currently, hold on, gotta get up to the camera. I'm wearing my Indianapolis Joneses with the neon yellow liner. Tremendous pants. I've also got my tight wads that I love. Now, of course, our banner is right across my butt. If you could see my butt from behind the banner, which you can't because the banner's up there and we want you to see the promo code, they make your butt look incredible. Incredible. So, what if you want to live efficiently up top? Well, Bird Dogs makes polos now too. So, go to birddogs.com/Andy. You can use the promo code Andy as well and get a free tech hat with your order. birddogs.com/Andy, promo code Andy. Live your most efficient life. Stop wasting your time buying underwear and washing underwear. You don't have to do it anymore. Have the perfect fitting shorts and pants for every occasion and never have to worry about what's under them because you're covered with Bird Dogs. birddogs.com/Andy, promo code Andy with a free tech hat and the best shorts and pants and now polos that you've ever had. So that's the thing with these two that fascinates me, because it's two different situations completely. And one of them is very familiar to Alabama and one of them's not. The Kevin Steele situation is very familiar. It is Nick Saban going out and finding someone who's worked with him before, who's been either with him somewhere else or with him at Alabama, speaks his language, does everything that he likes to do, knows exactly what he wants. Then you got Tommy Rees, completely outside the family, the product of a nationwide search. I mean, he talked to the guy at Washington, he talked to Tommy, he talked to people all over the country, and he's adjusting to this new working environment that is a little bit different than everywhere else.
Yeah, it's interesting to me is how the flip-flop went. So last year you had a defensive coordinator that Saban knew from when he was basically a baby. He was as young almost as Rees was when he showed up. But then you had Bill O'Brien, former NFL head coach, probably didn't need a lot of work, So you flip-flop them. You bring in Kevin Steele, a guy that Nick Saban obviously trusts. He's been around the program. He's been around everywhere if you think about it. Kevin Steele has a long, long Wikipedia page. So he doesn't have to really worry about the defense, which has probably been the biggest concern the last couple of years. You bring in Tom, you got an offensive guy, they can work together. And I think it's going to the guys that come in and think different really help Saban take that offense to a next level with some new wrinkles and new twists.
What's interesting about the new wrinkles and twists, though, is that it's not really a new offense. It is the offense that they run. And Tommy Rees actually got asked about that because, a lot of times when a coordinator comes in, they bring their scheme with them. Everybody else, players and coaches, have to learn it. When Alabama brings in a new coordinator, you learn Alabama's scheme, the coordinator learns the language, and they call it that way. Let's hear Tommy Rees talking about that.
Coach, in the past, rather offensive coordinators that have been here, like Brian Daboll, Mike Loxley, obviously Bill O'Brien, they say Coach Saban wants you to learn the offense as opposed to bringing in your own system. Is it almost like going back in time and learning a whole new offense? And how steep has that learning curve been for you?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's the right way to do it. There's been a system in place here for however many years, and you have players here that are familiar with terminology, with what you're trying to accomplish. And so to say one guy's going to come in here and change everything would be the wrong way to approach it. I full-heartedly agree with that. The learning curve is what it is. I don't find it to be too steep at all. I think when you have a general base knowledge of the game, there's only so many run plays you can run, only so many pass concepts you can have. It's just training your brain to switch how you call it. So really, wasn't a steep learning curve at all. This offense obviously has been prolific over the last decade, and to come in here and say we're going to change all these things would be foolish. There's certain things that we want to do or alter or look at to enhance it, but a wholesale change would never make sense. And so, there are still times where, you got to remind yourself, hey, this is, we're calling it this. And again, we have a great staff, great support staff with our analysts and GAs that help us, with all those issues and all those little things. But our players have really bought into what we're asking them to do. And, for me to come in and learn the system was really a smoother transition than maybe, I anticipated.
So, Tim, what do you think this will look like ultimately? Because, we did see Notre Dame it was very run heavy, throw to the tight end a lot. Alabama, probably more talented across the board, similar probably talent level at offensive line and running back. But what do you think the Tommy Rees version of the Alabama offense looks like?
Yeah, I think the skill players at Alabama are going to be different. I know the speed will. Alabama's found a lot of guys at the wide receiver position that can absolutely fly. Probably not as polished of wide receivers as you're used to seeing with the guys we call rideouts with Judy, Ruggs, Waddle, and Smitty. But that's the comparison for Alabama fans. But there is no comparison to those four. Really, the greatest group I expect we'll ever see. But he's got speed guys at the receiver. They bring in the big tight end, C.J. Dupre from Maryland. They've got Amari Knoblack. They've got Robbie Oots. They've got tight ends, and he's always had a tight end heavy offense. So I think they'll make, that's a joke with Alabama fans too, by the way. Everybody that commits baseball, basketball, football, ice hockey, they want to know, can he play tight end? And they always ask the same question. So now they actually can play tight end. They got a big time one committed also, Caleb Odom, in this class. So I think we'll see more of the tight end, but also I think they can stretch the field with those receivers and the speed.
OJ Howard's like, man, I was born like 10 years too early.
He's a monster. Yeah. It's amazing. I was looking him up. He made a ton of money, never really made a ton of plays. And he was such a phenomenal looking athlete. I mean, he just is unbelievable.
Clemson left him wide open a couple times and it worked out for him. So
he got paid off. Yeah. He got paid off of that. So I think the offense can be opened up. I mean, they've got a good offensive line. Wolford's doing a good job of getting that sort of nasty. And like you said, Notre Dame sort of had that physical run game.
Great offensive lineman.
Alabama's preaching that more than ever. Alabama's had talented offensive linemen, but it's been a little bit more finesse than they're used to. You go back to, I guess, Barrett Jones is a classic example. A guy beating up A.J. McCarron when they're up 40 at Notre Dame in the national championship game. You're used to that mindset, those guys that would fight you. I think you're getting a little bit that more. I know the valuations are heading that way, the players that way, and the competition's really thick there, so that's going to help.
Well, and I would imagine that makes Alabama fans, especially the older Alabama fans, pretty happy because I'm sure they've enjoyed the pass-happy Alabama, but at some point they want to be able to run the damn ball. And this does seem like, just from a personnel standpoint, because the backs are so deep, and I'm really excited for Justice Haynes, but it feels like they can be a pretty run-heavy team.
Yeah, that's the thing. Alabama fans, they wanted to score 50. They were tired of winning 19-11. Well, they scored 50. Well, the other team started scoring 40, 38. So it's kind of been a love. Alabama fans want to score 50 and give up nothing, which is obviously impossible. But yeah, they've got the running backs back there. We talk about Justice, those guys, but a guy like Jamarian Miller, highly recruited guy, he's shown small flashes of what he can do. Obviously, Jace is an older guy. Roy Dell, you've got guys on campus. Richard Young's another freshman. So they've got some backs that can do some damage, and the big guys. But I think last year when you looked, one of the problems with that team was they they couldn't get that 3rd and 1, that 4th and 1. Like it was a given for many years. Just that 3rd and 1 was nothing. I mean, you knew they were coming right at you. They could have told you to play and got it. But last year you saw it. Even in the Texas game, you saw 4th and 1, couldn't seal the game away by getting that yard, had a slip in the backfield with Roydell Williams. So I think you're going to see a little bit more of that physical. And all these quarterbacks, the main guys competing, are guys that can tuck it and run. So there's the added element. I mean, everybody talks about Jalen Milroe and what a great athlete he is, and he is. But Simpson and Buckner, they're not anything to shy away from if they wanted to get them out there in the open and bootleg.
Well, I remember Buckner when he was starting at Notre Dame against Ohio State in the season opener last year before he got hurt. You're like, okay, this guy can move a little bit. This is, because Ian Book could move a little bit and people didn't realize it. And that helped Notre Dame's offense quite a bit over the years. And so it was clear that they liked that mobility there. But yeah, and they had to completely retool their offense when Tyler got hurt because Drew Pine was not that mobile. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that the mobility of the quarterback is going to matter. Now, I'm curious about the receivers, Tim. You mentioned you're probably never going to see a collection of talent like they had 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. But who among these guys might be the next high-round NFL draft pick at receiver?
I think Ja'Cory Brooks, I don't know how high of a pick he'll be. I don't know what his 40 time is going to be. Certainly you get in the first round. You got to have that 40 time down, but I think he's going to be a guy you can look to stretch the field. The one I keep waiting for is Isaiah Bond because he has first round speed. He's got top 10 speed, world class speed. He's still a little bit of a work in progress. You got a legitimate track guy who's getting out on the football field. Also Benson, the junior college player, he's a guy. And you watch those guys, you see him in JUCO, and they don't always have the best quarterback, but he's a guy I got high hopes for. He's another one that's got the Jets. And that's the thing about the NFL. When you start talking about draft picks, if you can run, that's the key. Because we've seen guys that if they can fly, they think they can teach you to do the rest. So Bama's got a lot of young guys. Jalen Hill's a guy that they signed from Texas last year. I'm still looking to see when he takes that next step. He's got that. Texas has that polished wide receiver. They play like 1,000,000 7-on-7 games. They run 1,000,000 routes in Texas. They're throwing the football in, 6. In Alabama, we're still running the wing tee at 6 years old. Their quarterbacks out of shotgun. So they've got guys that can step up. And Kobe Prentice is another one they found from Clear that Mike Loxley had committed early on. So they got some speed guys that can run around out there.
So you mentioned the quarterbacks. It's a 3-man race right now. Milroe, Simpson, Buckner. Nick Saban got asked about those guys today, and interesting, some historical perspective he gave us that I was pretty interested in.
What does it say about the competitiveness of the guys in the quarterback room that you already had, that when you brought a transfer in the spring that they all decided to stay and compete for the job?
Well, I think they all have an opportunity to compete for the job. But, this job that you all talk about at quarterback, I've told our quarterbacks, this is not, fall camp is not the beginning of the end. You got an opportunity to separate yourself, to show that you can play with consistency and play winning football at the position. But that competition goes on and on and on, and we need all of the quarterbacks to continue to improve and to continue to compete even far beyond the time that we name a starter. I mean, we've had circumstances around here where quarterbacks have changed during the course of the year. You know what they are. You understand the history of what's happened at this place. And so that's going to be the way this situation is. Somebody needs to separate themselves. And then I want all the players to continue to compete so that they can improve. So if they do get an opportunity to play, they're going to be ready to play and play well.
I love that his answer to that is essentially, it doesn't matter who we pick as the day one starter because I will replace my starting quarterback at halftime of the national championship game if I need to.
Yeah, when you have that reputation, you remember the year they started out with Blake Barnett was a starter, Jalen Hurts took over and didn't turn it over until halftime of that national championship game. So you know that he will roll the dice out there a little bit. I think quarterback's so interesting for Alabama because they went like however many years it's been just to, spoil before guys that are going to be starters in the NFL back to back to back to back.
It's
So now,
it's crazy. Let's go to the list because you mentioned
yeah,
Blake
please.
Barnett. So Blake Barnett starts game 1 in 2016. That's that USC game in
That's
Jerry
right.
World.
Mhm.
Jalen comes in. I can't remember if it's the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second. Never gives it up. He's the starter throughout that season, into the next season, and then Tua takes over. So you got Jalen Hurts, who, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, took his team to the
Yeah.
Super Bowl last year. Tua Tagovailoa, first-round draft pick. We'll see what happens with the concussions, but there's no doubt about his ability in the NFL. Mac Jones, I mean, just first-round draft pick, easy. Bryce Young, Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 overall pick. We talked about those receivers, but this is a level of spoiled that I don't know that many programs have ever had.
I mean, 4 in a row starting in the NFL. I mean, maybe USC had that run a while back, but even them, Matt Leinart never really took the reins, in the NFL with the Cardinals. But yeah, I mean, you have all that. And that's why when there's uncertainty with the position, and there's definitely uncertainty, but all the uncertainty is not bad. You know what I mean? You have guys pushing. I love the competition edge. I love a little bit of, I go back and forth. If you ask me tomorrow what I think, I'll probably tell you a different quarterback than I would today. But I love the fact they're battling. And like you said, this isn't going to end. You just because you lose the starting job the first game doesn't mean you're even going to not finish the game out. So heavy competition. You know what's funny? I had several people that think Dylan Lonergan might be the best of the bunch, which is
Thank you.
I mean, like recently, like they're still, Travis Ryder, who works with me on BOL, loves Dylan. He doesn't matter. He loves Dylan. But I've heard this repeatedly that people watching think Dylan has the biggest upside, which would be an amazing story.
So, backstory on this, Tim, on my old show, I prefaced it every time by saying I realize I am overreacting to a couple series in the spring game, but after the spring game, I was like, Dylan Lonergan's the guy. Just wait, you'll see, it'll happen.
He looked the part.
But here's obviously, that coaches can stage manage spring games to get you what you want. Sometimes the quarterback will be challenged more by the defense. Sometimes he won't. But I will say, watching everybody play, watching the 4 that played, because Holstein played in the spring game as well. You're watching Milrow and you're watching Simpson, and you can kind of see the gears turning as they're trying to work through the offense and deal with the pass rush and everything. Lonergan, and maybe it's because he plays baseball at a high level. I'm not sure where it comes from, but he just comes out there and he's like, just licking his fingers, like, oh, yeah. All right, let's go. And you just like
he looked it
jumped off the screen.
He obviously wasn't going against the ones, but he also wasn't with the ones. So I mean,
right.
He looked the part of a quarterback. You know what I mean? Like if there was a movie and they were auditioning somebody, Dylan would have got that role. You know what I mean? So he looked the part. He rolled out. He's comfortable. That'd be the best story ever because he was kind of an afterthought in the class. Everybody focused on Eli Holstein and some other guys. And then Dylan came on late.
Dylan got crystal ball to South Carolina for a long time.
Yeah, they thought heavily. And then because I was really thought Bama was done. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we kind of like this Dylan guy. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And, they've had a history of doing stuff like that before, signing 2 quarterbacks.
Mac.
I mean, Mac signed with Tua, you know what I mean? So this is a guy that signed 4 running backs in the class. So there's nothing really off the table with Nick Saban. So that would be the best story ever. Now, I do think the true freshman, he's not where, knowing the offense and all that, he's not where you want to be. But the fact I've even heard that from different people that don't know each other has always been like, oh man, wow,
Yeah, it's very interesting, but it does sound like it's Buckner, Milrow, or Simpson probably at the first. And the Buckner thing, I think people assume because he's the transfer that he's just gonna be handed the job because he worked with Tommy Rees. He didn't leave a starting job at Notre Dame. He wasn't promised squat. So this is a real competition.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not like, Tommy Rees is going to make the final decision alone. There's not going to be one guy to stand up and name the quarter. I mean, they're going to have a lot of people with an opinion in there. I think it does help. I'm mixed on it because he knows Tommy Rees, but he doesn't really know Nick Saban's system. Mm-hmm. And it is a new system. But I do think there's a trust factor there with Tommy bringing him and having coached him and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to sexy, he's probably the least sexy of the three. I mean, obviously Jalen, he's a next. I mean, he looks like Adrian Peterson to me. Like when he runs, he looks like a professional bodybuilder that's running in the 4.4s, which is what Adrian looked like. Ty Simpson's got that smoothness. His dad was a college football player. Buckner, you don't really hear as much about, but I've seen those guys. I think a lot of people would say Greg McElroy wasn't a sexy choice at quarterback. And, you saw him play some games and, he was McElroy was the backup for Tebow. They didn't even offer him to the night Tim Tebow committed to Florida. So he was committed to Texas Tech. So, overall, I love the competition. I love that we're talking about the quarterback position because it seems like a long time since we've been doing that.
Well, yeah, because they've had somebody else to just ready to jump in.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of somebody else ready to jump in, let's talk about Kevin Steele coming to run that defense. This is a man who looked very comfortable talking about running Nick Saban's defense. And he even said, hey, look, it's Nick Saban's defense. Yeah. But I've been running it for years. So the thing I always admired about Kevin Steele is what happened after Clemson. Because when he got fired at Clemson, it was a very embarrassing situation. They had been torched by West Virginia in the Orange Bowl. It looked like he had fallen behind in terms of dealing with what the newest offenses were going to do. And then he has the time as an analyst at Alabama, reemerges at LSU, and suddenly he's one of the best at stopping those up-tempo offenses and was really good at it at Auburn too. So obviously things didn't work at Miami last year, but
you know what? Miami's just a tough job. You know what I mean? I wouldn't blame anybody, but I thought he did a good job at Auburn. I mean, the only one to even come remotely close to slowing down that LSU
2019.
I mean, seriously, like people acting like that's just one game. Well, that's one big game.
He gave him a chance to win. The offense didn't. Their offense didn't do it, but they had a chance.
Also, Auburn's defense was a nasty defense under him. I mean, the thing that you like is Auburn has a tendency to put a lot of guys in the NFL, and you don't really talk about them a lot. You don't hear a lot of them when they're being recruited, and lower ranked guys. It's not the big name guys, but you look up, they're all Americans, they're all SEC, they're going high in the draft. Kevin Steele did a good job with that of evaluating. I think that carries over to Alabama, where if you're Alabama, you're pulling from the national pool when you recruit. So I think there's a lot to like. And also, again, when it comes to Kevin Steele's seen so much, you can't replace that experience. And like you said, he walked up to that podium. There was, shot you as straight as you could get, right? Hey, this is his, he calls him coach and it's his scheme, but I'm comfortable doing it. He said everything right in that press conference.
So one of the reporters asked Kevin Steele about returning to the Alabama standard, which is clearly a term that maybe the players have been fed for their interviews and has been used in the media, but is not used internally. Here's Kevin Steele's response.
Excuse me now, bringing back what?
The Alabama standard to the defense.
Well, I that's kind of a loaded question in some regards, in that this process is built, and it started in 2007. I was here. So it hasn't gone anywhere. It really hasn't. Obviously, offensive football has changed. It's harder on defense right now at this present time than maybe it's been in a long, long time. But the process is the process, and that's the things I talked about earlier in terms of physical and mental toughness, relentless effort, dominate your opponent, and do your job. It's simple principles. Obviously, schematically, we have a defense that can put pressure on offense. I mean, it's built that way. We have a lot of moving parts in that regard. And it's just knowing your job and doing your job.
Yes, Coach. You've been here before, and so obviously you were very familiar with of this. I'm curious about if, when Coach Saban brought you back, if he had something like he had with Lane Kiffin, where he said, we've got to do something to change whatever's going on. And I wonder if he had any directive like that, a specific directive to you when you came back.
Well, obviously, part of that question is a question for the head coach, why he did what he did. But Coach always has directives for whatever's going on in this building, any point in time. So, yes, this is what I want, and this is how I want it. Was it different than what it was before I got here? I don't know. I wasn't here. it wasn't any different than it was the other 2 times I was here.
They tried really hard to get him to throw Pete Golden under the bus. But
yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, that, you know, again, he's a pro's pro. He's dealt with so much. He's been to SEC several times. He's been at Alabama several times. I think he gets it. And also, he's the ultimate professional. I don't see him calling out another coach in any circumstance, especially when he wasn't here. He said that. He said, you have to ask Coach Saban what his motives were. He wasn't here for it. So I think you're seeing a pro's pro, and that's probably what that staff needs. And Pete related well to the players. This is my theory. Pete related really well to the players, was almost like a big brother or an uncle. So it's hard for Pete, who's very young, to really come down hard on the guys. I know a lot of them liked Pete. I think Kevin Steele is going to be the type to be very strictly business, handle it, pat you on the head, tell you what he thinks about what happened, and then walk away. Which I'm old. I got kids. That's what I do. I yell at them and I walk away. I'm hanging out with them.
Yeah, you're not there to be the best buddy. You're
no. They got their own friends. I got
give some order.
Absolutely. But it was interesting. The press conferences went good, I thought.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Rees. He handled himself very well. And then I kind of, you know what you're going to get from Kevin Steele. So
yeah,
I keep turning back to Alabama the more I learn about this team. I feel like, and because initially I thought, okay, maybe LSU's taking that step. Maybe LSU should be favored in the West. I flipped on that before SEC Media Days. I still think it's Georgia in the SEC, but
sure,
the more I learn, the better I like Alabama.
Yeah, with Alabama, it's just hard. I get the questions. I mean, it's been a long time since I remember this many questions. 2 new coordinators, a new quarterback. That alone makes it as rare. I mean, how many people in the country have that situation? 2 new coordinators and a starting quarterback. So just a lot going on. But again, change doesn't mean bad things. There's been change before, and the offense changed and mixed up some stuff. But I do think we're going to see more balanced. I mean, I don't think we're ever going back to 3 yards in a cloud of dust. No. I don't think we're ever going back to that. If you do, you're going to get the brake speed off of you. But I think we'll see a little bit more balance, because Alabama at some point offensively was almost like a 7-on-7 team. It was like a pickup game. They were just scoring so easily. So I think you're going to, and of course the offense controlling the ball is going to help the defense as well. I can't imagine being on defense. They score, you go out there, then, you sit down, and then boom, you hear Tua's dropped a touchdown pass into Judy's lap, and you're like, crap, I'm back out there. So, yeah, maybe the offense can help them out a little bit.
So for your Bama Online merch store, just a suggestion.
All right, let's
T-shirt, crimson T-shirt, white writing, front of the T-shirt, run the damn ball, back of the T-shirt, make his ass quit. It's going to sell like hotcakes.
Absolutely it would. I'm gonna give you a quarter every time I sell one.
Love it. Love a royalty. Tim Watts, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man.